Welcome to DFW Running Talk. I'm Chris Detzel, so let's get started. All right, welcome to another DFW Running Talk. I'm Chris Detzel, and today we have Texas Outlaws Running CEO, founder, and I guess you could call him a race director as well, Briston Rains. Briston, how are you?
Good, man. Actually, I don't like to say good. I like to say peachy nowadays.
Peachy, wasn't it?
I feel like you always ask people how they're doing. They always say good. So I try to change it up, say peachy or something.
Yeah, maybe there should be another question, before it.
Yeah, I feel like when you ask someone how they're doing, it's really like a hello
Yeah.
nowadays. And I don't think it's like a genuine, oh, how are you doing? You know what I mean?
Yeah. So it's probably a good point. If I were to ask you exactly how you're doing and you have all these things going on, it depends. I'm doing okay in this, not okay in this, and those kinds of things. But hey, I'm really excited to talk to you today, Preston. And I remember probably 4 years ago hearing about one of your races. And I thought to myself, who is this kid? And I think a lot of people did, to be
Yeah.
honest. And I thought, I don't even know what this is. And it's really fun to watch you over the last 4 years. You've actually started several races. You're a race director, CEO, like I said, of Texas Outlaw Running. So I would love to know your story. Tell us a little bit about, how you got started, why you got started, and what you are actually doing. Let's do that.
Okay. Yeah, man. I can share how it all got started. So I attended Southern Arkansas University and I ran cross country there as a freshman in college. And in high school, prior to that, I've always been very entrepreneurial. And there's this man by the name of Gary Vaynerchuk that I used to watch. And he would
We
always
all know who he
say,
is.
you do know who he is?
Oh, yeah. I think we
Yeah.
all do, or a lot of people do.
Basically, his whole message was like, do what you love, create a business. Like, if you're an entrepreneur, create a business around something you love.
Yeah.
And so in high school, I started a company called Apache Running. And I just thought it sounded cool. And basically, it was like a clothing line for running clothes. And I only made 50 pairs of shirts and sold them to a bunch of friends on my cross country team. Anyways, but
They bought them?
no, do what?
They bought them?
Yeah, yeah. I
That's pretty
think I
cool.
sold them. I don't. I sold them to a bunch of family friends, stuff like that.
Yeah, of course.
Yeah, so that was like my beginning of going into business and running. And
Yeah.
even prior to that, this is a funny story. I was 15 years old when I started a company called like Taller Clothing or something. And I was freshman, sophomore in high school. And a company called Poller Construction, I think is the name of their company,
Ah,
emailed me and said they were going to sue me if I didn't change my name. And I was
ruh-roh.
15 years old. It was totally a not legit business, but
So I better
so,
just not do this.
yeah. And literally, like in high school, I played around a lot with businesses and things, and so I had a
That's
very
pretty
entrepreneurial
awesome.
mindset. But then I also loved running, and so going into college, I was running, and I was trying to think about what I wanted to do with my future because I'm a freshman in college. I'm a marketing major. I knew I wanted to get something involved with marketing and sports.
Yeah.
Um, and so I remember it was 2 weeks into college, and I'm sitting in a some type of economics class, and I'm just sitting there, and all of a sudden, this idea hits me of what if I started a running company to where I did coaching and races and merch, and it was all in one company.
Yeah.
And then in that class, I started writing down name ideas. I walk over to my dorm room, and as I put the key into my door of my dorm room, the name of the company hits me. At the time, it was Texas Devil Running Company, but it's now Texas Outlaw. But I walk in there, I tell my roommate, I'm like, hey man, I'm gonna start this business and I'm gonna put on races and coach and do all this stuff. And I grab this notebook that I still have and I start to write down this business in this notebook. And I didn't have a lot of money at the time. I only maybe had a few $100 in my bank account. So I take that few hundred
As a
dollars.
college student would, right?
Yeah. Yeah, I didn't have anything. And that money was actually, I think, for my summer jobs. But I took all my money I had and I paid somebody for a logo, paid for a website, and that was it. And that was
Did you
all my
build your
money.
own website or you had somebody do it?
No, I built my own because I was broke. I had to do my own stuff. So,
Yeah. Back
uh,
then, even 4 years ago, doing all of that stuff wasn't as easy as it is today with all the new tools that came out. Anyways, we don't have to get
Mhm.
into that, but anyway, keep going.
You're not wrong. You're not wrong. It is way easier now than it was before. But
Yeah.
and now like I hire people to do a bunch of stuff. But back then, man, I didn't have any money, and so I had to figure out how to do things on my own. And created the website, and I created my first race. It was going to be a 5K in my hometown, Gainesville. And so I created that race, and then I created 2 more races during the summer, and both of those races I'm still doing now. I created the Chupacabra 50K at the time, and then the East Texas Ultra.
Yeah.
And so I had 3 races all in the year for 2021. Um, and so that's like the beginning of it all
Very
and
true.
how it started. And I remember I would even, which actually now I think about it, I need to reach out to these guys and make sure I pay their equal share. But I was going to my room, like people in my dorm, and asking
Yeah.
if they wanted to invest some money because I had no money and I needed some money to do stuff. And so I would have friends invest like $20 for 0.002% or something. And I knew the value of this business. I knew it was going to be worth a lot because
Yeah.
I was looking at other races and race directors, and I did the math on how much they were making. And so when this company was worth nothing, I valuated it at $100,000. And
Okay.
so everyone was investing based off my evaluation. So anyways, a side tangent, but that's how I got started with
No,
literally
I
investing.
like that, and I don't. I think that when people are thinking about when to start a business, they should look at ROI from it, right? Like, how do you? Is it even worth getting into? How is it proved to me? What are people making from? There's a whole business side of this, and I'll tell you this, and something that was I was talking to Rob the other day. I don't know if Rob go in, but
Oh,
he was telling me, look, there's a lot of these race directors, especially in the past, that put on these trail races, and they did it just for the love of trail racing, which is fine and good, but they weren't looking at the business side of it, of making money. So they would just put on 50 milers or 100 milers and thinking they're going to make it, or they're going to get not necessarily make money or a lot of money because they weren't necessarily doing it for the money, but there's a whole business side of it. You have to pay people and you have to be able to, and he goes, look, putting in a 5K, 10K, 8 miler and those kinds of things, that was unheard of until really I think he's the one that started to do a lot of that in Texas.
mm,
And then everybody else started to follow because that's where the money is. 100 milers, there's no money in it. I'm not saying you shouldn't do some of those for the anyways, I think that's important though.
and I think also, so I did a survey junior year of high school. I had a statistics class. And so I did a survey asking trail runners like some of the most important things at races. Oh, and among ultra or trail runners, both, the biggest thing is they cared about who the race director was. And that was a big factor on if they sign up for a race or not. Whereas road runners, they don't care who the race director is, but trail runners do. And that made me realize if someone wants to start a running event company or trail running event company, you can't do it just to make money. You got to do it because you actually are a part and enjoy the sport
Yeah.
and you're actually involved. Because if someone comes in, and we saw this happen with Ironman buying out a bunch of trail race companies
Mhm.
and UTMB, everybody got all upset because basically these rich people that didn't care about trail running at all were coming in and just doing it for the money. People don't like those intentions. People don't like participating in something when it's just a money grab. And so I think me having my experience and my passion with cross country and trail running when I was younger and combining that with my entrepreneurial side, I think it blended really well into what it is now. Uh, but yeah, man, you got to be a you got to be a runner, a trail runner yourself if you do want to try to get into the business.
Yeah, I think that if you look at other folks that have built some of these races, and I would agree, most of the time the race directors and that start these races are big time into the trail community. And I would say like even this weekend, you and I were at this, I forgot what it's called. You probably
Dirt
remember.
circus.
Yeah, Dirt Circus and Grapevine area. And just that community, the people I know, but it's just a welcoming community. I wouldn't say it doesn't, you can get that on the road, but it's a different, completely different atmosphere. I just feel closer and people really do care. I'm not saying, look, I'm part of communities that are about road racing and they care, but it's just a different mindset, right? You go to a 5K that here in Dallas and you can have 2,000 runners and it's fun. It's not just, hey, I'm going to meet up with a bunch of people, hang out and, go out. So I think that the dynamic is completely different for sure. So you have what, 4 or 5 people that are on your team that really help out, or how does that work?
Yeah. So currently we have 4. I'm about to add a 5th. So I'll explain that real quick.
Yeah.
So for 3 years straight, everything was me. I was race director, CEO. I was doing all the accounting, like every aspect of this thing I was doing, and I had to figure it all out by myself. I use like YouTube and Google and stuff to figure it all out. But as of last year, really this year, I brought on one of my best friends and college roommate. His name's Asher Hamlin. And he has been at races with me for the past few years on and off, just helping out. And so I brought him on full time as a race director. He's getting paid salary now to go
Nice.
and put on races. His wife that he just married, Mackenzie, she is his assistant race director, and she helps him just do stuff that needs to be done at the races.
Yeah.
I still do some races. So there's some races I'll still race direct, some little races, but I'm more so focused on operations now. So my title, I give myself as operations manager, and basically I handle all the permits. I handle all the marketing side of things, payroll, just typical business owner things that you have to do. And so I'm still at some races, especially the really big ones, but I'm not at every race now. Asher's doing that. And then my wife, Carly, she's my secretary. And so she handles volunteers, race credits, things like that. She handles all that for me. And then we're about to bring on, and we're supporting 2 families off of it, which is pretty cool.
It is cool.
And soon to be a 3rd. Yeah.
So what's your biggest rate? What are your top 2 or 3 races that are put on?
Yeah. Some of the biggest ones we have the West Texas Ultra over near Amarillo. It's a beautiful race. We put it on for the first time this year and had 2 to 250 people for the first year, which is like huge
great.
for a first year. Usually first years are like 100 to 200. We had over 200 for the first year. And so that's definitely one of the big ones. We got the Big Texas Ultra. Actually have 95 people signed up for the 50K this year. And it's a 30-mile loop around Lake Georgetown. And so that's a cool race.
I was looking at all your races, by the way. You have 30 of them.
Yeah, I have total. I think I got about 35 right now.
I saw 30 on your website, so I don't know if they're all on.
There's a few other ones that are like still in the process of being made, or
Okay.
I'm also including, I started this kind of side brand called Holiday Races, where we do trail races on the holidays all over the United States.
Yeah.
And so I'm including some of those too.
So you're not pushing that into the Texas Outlaw stuff.
No, that one's different because here's the thing. Like I've worked with people to help put the races on for them, their dream races, and I pay them a cut and stuff. But basically, I don't want somebody else course marking and putting on a race if it's not to my standard and if they're using my brand. And so like for Texas Outlaw Running, me and Asher, whoever's putting on a race, I have a standard and it needs to meet and exceed that standard. If, for example, I put on a race and hire somebody to do it in California and they jack up the course markings, that's going to hurt my brand. And I don't like that. So I'm not going to do that. So I created a company called Holiday Races where we still set the standards, but it's not tied into Texas Outlaw Running. It's still using some of the principles.
Kind of its
And
own thing.
basically, it's like, if you want to put on a race, you work with Holiday Races and I walk you through every step of it, and you get paid to be a race director, and you get to put on a race on a holiday and wherever you're going to be. And so that's like a new thing because I get so many people wanting to be a race director.
So you
Well,
guide them and the standards
Yeah.
and what to do and all of those things to help them put on that race.
Right. Yeah. And it also helps to where, let's say they do jack up and mess something up. It's not going to hurt Texas Outlaw Running. And I got to make sure I'm there physically showing them how to do stuff if it's going to be a part of Texas Outlaw Running, because
Yeah.
I have a high standard. I tell Asher, my race director, all the time, I said, I want the best aid stations, the best course markings, and the most friendly and encouraging staff we can have. And that's my standard. It's near perfect. It's like, in our policy, I have a policy of I want an Olympic standard to where you're not perfect. Like Olympians aren't perfect, but they're pretty close. They do everything to the best of their ability. So that's what Texas Outlaw Running is and how we run the business, put on the events. So
Well, no, I think that's interesting. I love that. I hear what you're saying about we put holiday races on, or we help the folks that are outside of, or not necessarily the standards of Texas Outlaw Running. If you're not there, or if Asher's not there, then you're probably not going to call it Texas Outlaw Running or
right,
associate with that. It's going to be associated with holiday races. So that's
right,
interesting.
yeah,
Yeah, I see it more as like a consulting kind of gig,
oh,
to where you guys are just consulting people on how to put on a race, and the consulting company is Holiday Races, that
yeah,
helps you with the standards and ways to do things and things like that. So that's pretty cool. So are you a cross country coach as well, or track coach?
yeah. So man, people listening to this are probably like, "What in the world? This guy's got too much going on." So I'll lay it out for you.
Yeah.
So am, uh, I'm a pretty active and advocate of Christianity, follower of Christ. So I'm busy with the church a lot. I'm
Yeah.
actually getting my master's in theology right now online. In addition to that, I'm a husband. I'm a father to a newborn, 3 week old baby right now.
Congratulations. It's awesome.
Yeah, man. Thanks, man. And then I am the owner and operations manager of Texas Outlaw Running and Holiday Races. And I'm a teacher and a coach at a small school over here in East Texas. So I got my plate full, but I make it work somehow. Everything comes together still. So
Yeah.
that's
It's
all I do.
now, is it just for like ninth grade and up, or how does that for the cross country?
Yeah, cross country is middle school and high school, but it's such a
Okay.
small school that I only have 5 kids on the team. So, but
Five
yeah,
kids. Okay.
yeah,
You've
5
got you've
kids.
got to
Pretty good.
evangelize that a little bit more about how important running is.
Yeah, if I could do it over again, I'd go in the cafeteria and set up a booth and get some more kids recruited.
Do it
So,
next year.
yeah,
I mean, see if you get some interest.
yeah,
So you're pretty much all over Texas. Obviously, Longview. I think that's where you live, right?
yep.
And I remember as a kid driving to Longview. I'm in Dallas, and so my mom had a friend in Longview, and I thought it was the longest drive ever. It's 3 hours thing,
Yeah.
but you're used to driving.
Yep.
I mean, you're just like you said, you're not on the road as much as you were. So I guess that's positive with all the stuff that you're doing now.
Yeah. And yeah, I was strategic having the baby, bringing Asher on. And honestly, at the time, I wasn't a coach or a teacher. That's a new thing. But at the time, I was working ridiculous hours. And so I knew it was time to bring Asher on. But yeah, I learned how to just enjoy the drives because we would have 10-hour drives every the other week out to races and putting them on and coming back. Yeah, man, got used to the driving. So it's cool though. It's felt like a trucking job because I was shipping supplies to the race site and then shipping it back, pulling the trailer. So
How do you start looking at? There's a couple of things I want to talk about. Volunteers, and it seems like in every race that you go to, the volunteers are always the hardest to find, and especially if they're having to drive far, and it's obviously people have full time jobs, but they come on their own to volunteer. How do you incentivize and think about that? Look at your website, and it tells you what they get, but how do you manage that?
yeah, so for volunteers, honestly, we have a great volunteer community with Texas Outlaw. We got a lot of like repeat volunteers, great people.
Yeah.
But basically, what I do is, as we're putting on these races, some of them are bigger than others. So like the volunteer need depends on how big the race is. But pretty much what I do is I let participants know, hey, the race is in a week or 2 weeks, and we need some volunteers. We need 3 volunteers or 10 volunteers or whatever the amount is. And I let them know, hey, like for this to race to be successful, we need people to come out and volunteer. And I think it's a bonus too that they get race credits towards our races. And we
Yeah.
have so many that they're able to use those race credits. Whereas if you're volunteering for a race that's once a year or a race company that doesn't have many races, you can't really use those credits like you would like to. Whereas we're all over, so you're able to use them
Yeah.
wherever. But yeah, I just send an email out and people show up, show out. And if it wasn't for the volunteers, man, like
You have
our
to have
races
them,
would be
man.
terrible. They would,
No,
they
that's
really
probably
do.
one of the biggest things that I would assume that you'd have to put the effort into, right? There's a lot of things that go on in a race. And I think what you said was perfect earlier is you really have to have a love for it and going out and then finding the volunteers is going to be, it's a challenge, I'm sure. Maybe you figure out maybe there's a magic formula to do it. I don't know, but I'm sure it's always a challenge.
Yeah, it is, and sometimes I gotta push harder than others. Like, we got the big Texas Ultra coming up, which is that 30-mile loop, and we're
Yeah.
definitely needing a lot of volunteers, and so that one I'm really gonna push for, really let everybody know, "Hey, we need some volunteers for this thing." But, yeah, I mean, it just, again, depends on the size of the race, depends on how many we need, but we
But
got a
the
full
point,
community.
sorry.
No, you're good, man, you're good, but,
The questions I was going to ask is one is I was looking at some of your races and you don't really do many 100 milers. I think I saw one in there, but is there, which I think I understand why, but that's a long ways to go.
yeah, 100 milers. There's so few people that run 100 milers,
Yeah.
um, and for us to stay up that long and put that much resources into it, I just don't see it really paying off. I do eventually want to do a really big 100-mile race in Texas. That'd be great, and that's something that I strive to do one day. But to put on a 100-mile race around a looped course is just monotonous, and like if someone's gonna go run 100 miles, they're gonna go out of state and run a
Yeah. That's right.
out and back 50 mile or a looped 100 or something. Nobody wants to run 100 miles around a 5K loop or a 10 or 20-mile loop. They'd rather make it a full experience to where it's not so easy to quit when you loop through. I'm waiting for the right opportunity and time to put on a really good 100 miler, but I don't see a good point in doing it right now with our current setup and our resources.
It's look the places in Texas more than I do, I'm sure, but the only place that I remember that has pretty good 100 miler potential, or at least hey, look, there's mountains is El Paso.
Yeah,
Um,
I've looked around. Texas isn't as blessed with trail systems as the mountain states, but
yeah, that's right.
I've looked around and there's places to do one. There's definitely a few places you can do them, but there's only a few. There's only four, maybe 3 or 4 places you can do it. And I would not go out to El Paso. It's too far away. I'd
Yeah,
want to
it's
do
really far.
something in the central part of Texas or the north or south, somewhere that's not a 20-hour drive or something. There's places to do them. There's very few of them. And depending on the place, depends on the restrictions. And I actually plan on course previewing one of the locations here soon. But maybe 2026 have a full on 50 miles out, 50 miles back, 100 mile, or even 100 miles out and then shuttle back or something. I don't know. But it's in the works of doing something like that because there's nothing like that in Texas. And I see that and I'm willing to jump in it and make it work.
And there are 100 milers, right? But a
Right.
lot of times they're, like you said, looped and things like that. So
Yeah, there's no out and back or point to point 100 milers. You're looped. One big loop 100 milers in Texas that I know of. That's, let me say, that's within 10 hours of Dallas,
yeah,
or not Dallas, but Austin. Because I'm sure they probably got something like that down in Big Bend area or even
mhm,
El Paso, Franklin Mountain area. I'm sure they got something like that out there, but that's way too far away. That's like another state. So I would need something
yeah.
around Dallas, within a few hours of Dallas or Austin or even San Antonio would be preferable. So,
Now, do you still do quite a bit of running yourself?
oh yeah, definitely. I did a few things this year. So I carried a cross for 24 hours straight and I covered 40 miles and it was a 60-pound cross and that's on YouTube. And
Wow.
then I did the La Nui 9-hour relay in Dallas and we won that one. Our
Now, how
team,
many people were on that?
it's a 3-man team and we would run a loop and then switch. And it was I think it was like a 5K loop or something.
Okay. A lot of switching then.
Do what?
I said a lot of switching then.
Oh yeah. Yeah. So we'd run through and then hand off the bib.
Basically, then you do another one.
Yep. Yeah. It was interesting. You'd run and then sit there for 40 minutes and then go run again. And you do that for 9 hours. So
Yeah.
And
The
then
only thing I did like that before was, and it wasn't 9 hours, but I think there's four of us, and it was, what's it called? It's a very popular race in San Antonio area, but basically we had run, it was a 30 something miles each, right? And then you just get up, run there was a red, green, and yellow loop, and each one's a different mile. So one was 8 miles, one was 5, and one was 3. And we just do it 3 times each, but we had to switch off all the time. And it took us, I think, 19 hours overall to do it. And those are fun because you're doing it with the team. I really like the team things like that. I don't like to do it on the road too much, but so are all your races pretty much trail?
yeah, I would say about 90% of them are all trail. So the North Texas Ultra is on a gravel trailway, like a
Yeah.
super fine gravel trailway. And so that one's cool because it's flat, it's paved with super fine gravel. So your knees don't get um, jammed up like it does on the road. And it's anywhere from a 10K to a 100K. And so a lot of people like to go out there and run some fast ultras.
Yeah.
And we even had a blind runner come out and run a 50K this past year. And if that was a trail, I don't know if he would have been able to do it. But the fact that it was a paved
Yeah.
gravel trail and it was wide and flat with no roots or anything, he was able to do that 50K distance. He could even do the 100K if he wanted to. But we have that one. And then we also I'm delving into the road marathon for the first time. So
Okay.
my hometown is Gainesville, Texas, and I've always had a dream of putting on a big city marathon there. And so in February, we're going to be putting on the Gainesville Marathon, and they're going to shut downtown down. The police are, we're going to have police escort. You get to go
Oh,
through historic downtown Gainesville out into the county roads and then run back. And so that's going to be our first big road race we're doing like that. And so that'll be really neat.
so you'll
Uh,
show up for that one then.
yeah, man. Yeah.
5K, a half marathon, and a 26.2. So in the marathon, right?
Yeah. No, the Gainesville Marathon is, since it's the first year, I'm just doing a 5K, 10K half marathon. Next year, if it goes well, we'll add on the marathon, but I don't want to do a full marathon distance and
Oh,
not know what I'm getting myself into.
might change your website because it says February 2025, 5K, 13, 26.2.
Yeah, that might have been like the original plan, but once I got talking with the police and stuff, we ended up
Yeah, the
canceling that
marathon's
out.
too much this time.
Yeah.
I might come out for that one. Good to have or
Uh,
something.
yeah, I'm super excited about that one. We are, I think it's going to be on February 23rd. And so that's going to be our first time delving into the road marathon scene, or I guess half marathon to get scene. Um, and so we're going to get that started. We also have, um, a, a new thing we're delving into, but we got a race in March 8th called Beast of the Back Roads. And that one is a road 5K 10 mile. And then we're also doing, I know this is a running podcast, but we're also doing a 100-mile bike ride out there too.
Wow.
So,
I see 100. So that's the beast of the back roads.
yep.
It's 103 miles, 65 miles, and 27 for bike, or a 10 mile and a 5K run.
Yep.
It's
Yeah.
in Longview though, right?
Yeah. That's
Yeah.
a very long meeting.
It's a little easier for you.
Do what?
A little easier for you, right?
Yeah. And even that one, that was a race where a guy reached out and was like, "Hey, I want to do this race here." And I was like, "Let's do it." And so he's going to be doing the bike race, and then Asher's going to be doing the road running race. So,
Go back to like when you put on a new race, and in this case, on the Gainesville half marathon and 10K and 5K, how do you look at marketing that? I mean, you have a bunch of people that you can let them know if they want to come, obviously. This is actually in Gainesville, the place that I don't think you've done races before, right? So maybe there's people that you want to come. How do you market to that particular city and area? Is there specific ways to get contacts and things like that, or?
that's a really good question. And I think when anyone starts a business of any sorts, the number one question you got to ask yourself is how am I going to put this in front of people? You know, how people
Yeah.
know about it. And luckily nowadays we have access to the internet where we're able to advertise on the internet to people. And so I just use internet advertising to let people in the area know,
Ooh,
hey, we're doing this race.
Facebook and other Google ads and things like that?
Yeah, yeah. I use just online advertising, and I let people in the area know through that, and they can sign up through that, and that's how people really get word out and get to know about it is through online advertising. So that's how we let people know about it and how we get people to sign up for it. So
That's cool. It's seems like I wouldn't say easy. I felt like Google ads is expensive, but
yeah.
maybe it all just works out in the end.
Yeah, and you definitely gotta know what you're doing because if you click like the little boost post button on
Yeah.
social media, you're gonna be losing a ton of money. You gotta
Yeah,
go in.
boost. I want more.
Yeah, if you do the boost post, you're throwing a bunch of money away. I've learned so much about marketing the past, you know, 8 years,
Sure.
to figure it all out. And I watched enough YouTube videos and stuff and to figure it out. But you definitely got to go in, and it's definitely requires a lot of knowledge to know exactly what to do and what's most
Right.
effective. If you hop into a Google Ads or Facebook Ads Manager dashboard, you'd be like, it'd look like alien language probably.
Does. Yeah, if you're not used to it and you're not and you haven't, like you said, look, I think doing is the key at learning anything. Certainly you have YouTube and a bunch of other places to go in and find how to do that stuff, but it's not easy. Like I'll go in there like, oh, I want to do a LinkedIn kind of post around and I want to, get more podcast hits on my Data Hurdles podcast and start looking at it, I'm like, sorry, that costs a lot of money. And so you've gotta really think about how you're gonna use that. Sometimes maybe the strategy is just to get a bunch of emails so that over time you have those later as well, because you're collecting a lot of great email contacts and everything else by doing those ads because that's how they have to register.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. And you don't need a lot of money to start advertising. If you use Facebook, you could do $1 a day. That's what I did. Starting out, I just did $1 a day,
Really?
$30 a month starting out. And that's how I started. And a lot of people think you need all this money to start doing whatever it is that you need to do. But as y'all know, or as I didn't start with a lot of money, but all the profit that I'd get from the races, I would reinvest and start paying for things like ads and tables and tents. And I would just use that money I made and then purchase the equipment I needed. And that's all I did. It didn't require thousands of dollars or outside funding. I just reinvested it all. And I still do that too. Like to this day, every penny I can goes back to the business. So that way we can keep putting on great experiences for people. And I don't know if you saw my sign at Dirt Circus, but it said adventures all over Texas.
Mhm.
And that's since the beginning. That's what we're providing people is an adventure somewhere in Texas,
For sure.
whether a trail, road, whatever it is, you get to go on an adventure with yourself and in the world and in the wilderness, and you get to challenge yourself. And so, yeah, but I don't know how I got off to that.
No, that's
I got
good, man.
side fumbles, but
I like tangents. I don't know if anybody else does, but I'm pretty good at getting off on them. What kind of sets you do you feel like that you guys are set apart from other races? And if so, what is it that sets you apart from other races? And maybe it's not other races, just setting you apart to, hey, this is why people come to my races and this is why they want to do it. I know you mentioned it's a lot of times it's the relationships they might have with you or your race director and those kinds of things.
yeah, I think the biggest thing that makes us different than other race companies, and we get this a lot at our races. A lot of people tell us this, but when people come to our races, they say that it's just they can't describe it except that it just feels different.
Yeah.
It feels super welcoming. They love the vibe. They love the music. They love who we are, and they just enjoy it. And I get tons of comments on social media that just say like, "We had such a good time at your race, and we can't wait to do more," or "We absolutely loved it and had an amazing time." And that's my goal for everybody that comes to these races. And honestly, I can't pinpoint exactly what makes us stand apart, but when people come, they clearly explain, man, this is just different than anything we've been to before, and they like it. I do know, like I said before, I think when you come run with us, you're going to get good quality event. You're going to get fully loaded stacked aid stations. You're going to get a very well marked course, and you're going to get race staff that encourages and supports you the whole way and volunteers. And I guess our quality and who we are, because we are genuine, honest people, is what sets us apart from the rest. And obviously the amount of races we do sets us apart.
Certainly the amount.
Yeah.
I'm
Makes
not
it
done one of your
insane.
races yet. So, I was so excited that you said yes to come on this podcast because I was like, I'd love to get to know Briston a little bit.
Yeah. No, I was just going to say that whenever we have new people come to our races, and I've explained this to Asher too, but like we just try to treat you just like not like family. I feel like it's kind of cliche, but we're just very genuine and honest and open with people and like open arms and like super loving. And I'm a Christian and like we're called to love others. And so that's what we stand for, is just like loving on other people and celebrating their wins and their accomplishments with them. And so I guess when we get a new person in, they just get to experience. I would say that's probably the biggest thing that attributes to that difference people experience when they come. So yeah.
No, that's great. Looking around, you've got a great website, by the way. It's very clean, crisp. It tells you exactly what you need to do or where you need to go. So I really like it. You have not just a website, but you have a podcast, you have a social Facebook group, which I would thought there would be like thousands on there. There's 228 or something. But there's an opportunity there. But still, I think that overall you've done an excellent job of really promoting your brand in a lot of different ways. I think that your website really brings the connected experience to it. I think the digital piece is key at the end of the day, right? And I feel like you've done a really good job of that. So kudos to you. I was looking at it yesterday and then today, and I was like, Tim, this guy has done a really good job of you have 150 episodes on your podcast, so you're extremely consistent. You've grown your brand to 35 races, like you said, at
Yep.
least 30. That's on the website. And you're doing all the right things. I really love what you and the team have done and what you've created. Kudos to you.
Yeah. I appreciate that, man. Yeah, man. So I remember in college when I first started, I remember when I created the Instagram account, we had 0 followers,
Yeah.
brand new. And I would follow running pages and then follow the people that follow that running page. And that's how I
Yeah.
got my beginning followers. And I had nothing. I started with absolutely no content, no races, nothing. And looking back now, because now we have, like you said, everything's tied in and very consistent. And back then and even now, my perspective is just one brick at a time.
Mhm.
And so what you see now is accumulation of 4 years of putting a brick on top of a brick every single day for the
Yeah.
past 365 days. And when I look at other race directors, most of the other race directors are older. And one thing I have on them that they
I mean,
don't
pretty
have,
much all of them.
yeah, they're pretty much all older. And the perspective I've always held is I'm young. And if I just do something every day for the next 40 years, I can do something that these guys can't because of time. I have time on my side. And so I just looked at it as a perspective of just adding a brick every day. And every day is a brick, whether that's a piece, something posted on social media, podcast episode, making the website better, whatever it is. And I'm hundreds of hours into the website. That is something that has been developed and worked on and made to where it is now. Took a lot of time, a lot of late
And
night.
it's hard to become simple. And when you look at, all the things that you're doing and all the platforms that you're on and things like that, it's hard to bring it into one website. And not to stick to this website thing, but you've done a very good job of keeping it simple. And I think that's the key is if it's everywhere and I don't know what's going on and I can't even help. I'm sure you guys are drawing pretty good traffic from there because people want to sign up and things like that. So again,
Mhm.
kudos to you. And we're keeping it simple over the years. Like you said, you've been laying the foundation and the brickworks. You've thrown one brick at a time and it's not just over here or over there or like it's somewhat consolidated and it looks pretty good and pretty impressive.
Well, and I would say too, to that, you talked about how simple it is. one thing I always tell people now is just to keep it simple.
Yeah.
Like me, I'm very pragmatic and rational. And I want it to the point, and I don't want a bunch of extra stuff. I want the meat. I don't want all this extra stuff. And whenever I consult or talk with people that are trying to build a brand, the biggest thing I tell them is just to keep it simple. And yeah, there's a lot of ideas we have and things I could do. But at the end of the day, I want stuff that's going to have the most impact and that's the most efficient as possible. And, and yeah, like you said on the website, we got races, the store, content, and coaching.
Yeah.
You click on what you want. You want a race? All right, here's the races. Here's where they are, when they are. You want to sign up? There's a register button. Just to the point. And that's just how I operate. That's just how I am. I'm to the point, and I don't like all the extra fluff. And I don't think people in general like all the extra fluff. They just want to be able to get what they need and go. So,
Is there anybody that, and maybe this is a hard question, maybe it's not, I have no idea, but that you really respect from the trail running community that has done some of this stuff really well or anything like that? Do you look at anybody and say, that person did a really good job? Or really, I don't know, maybe there's not, maybe there is.
yeah, I was like a conglomerate of people. And so, like, when I first started, I didn't know what I was doing. So I would look at trail racing over Texas
Yeah.
or run bum races or Apache running. And I would look at even like Ironman, and I would look at how they have their stuff set up and what are they doing and how's everything laid out. And so I just took things I liked from all of them and put it into my website and then added on things that I thought should have been added. And so it's a conglomerate of all of the successful race organizers that you will see or know in the running community. So
Yeah, no, that makes sense. I've run on race once. I was in Tennessee or something like that.
uh,
Pretty cool race. I forgot what it's called, but it's really hard.
yeah, you have some cool ones. So
Yeah, I think you can learn a lot from the entire trail running community, and even I'm sure you can learn a lot from the road racing community as well, and how they market it and things like that. Look, I'm always a big fan of, hey, who's doing it the best? I remember, so and I know it's not about running, but I think that like I build online communities for a living or
yeah,
B2B companies, but the ones that are the B2C companies build really cool online communities. The B2B are a little bit more stuck in the old school thinking in some
yeah.
ways, right? And so how do you get yourself out of that old school thinking and just do what you're doing, right? I mean, you're all over social. Everybody is now. But anyways, anything that you think I should have asked that I didn't ask?
Well, good question. I don't know if I've ever had anyone ask me that in podcast. Let's see. Just making sure we're good on time over here. No, I think all the questions you guys have been great. And yeah, I think this is a pretty good conversation. I'm an open book. I'm not afraid to say it how it is. You'll get a lot of race directors on podcast
Yeah.
and they'll talk in a way that advertises to a runner. And in a way they manipulate what they say to make it
Mm.
sound good to the end consumer. So that way they'll come run their races. And for me, man, I'm an opus, honest book. I'm completely raw. I don't care what other people think. And we talked a lot about business on this episode.
Yeah.
We talked a lot about how operations work. And honestly, that's the meat and bones of it all.
Yeah.
And yeah, yes, I love trail running. I do it. I'm literally, not only do I still run them, but I'm literally training, and I love running in general. I'm training for now the Houston Marathon in January. And so I'm a runner myself.
Nice. So it's not even a trail. So that's great.
Yeah, that's on the trail. It's my first road run in a long time. So,
Do you
but
have a goal?
do what?
Do you have a goal in mind?
No, I'm just running it for fun, man. I'm gonna go out there, run with a guy I know. We're just gonna run it and get a medal and head home. So,
Great race. Yeah. After done the half, I don't do many marathons anymore. I just do a lot of halves and things like that. But it's a
yeah,
great atmosphere, great race. So it's awesome.
yeah, man. Yeah, so I'm looking forward to that. And Houston Marathon, that's a bit, there's a event organizer over that, and they're a business, and
Yeah, of
they're
course.
looking at everything logistically and business wise. And yeah, man. So let me ask you this: are there any like hard hitting questions you want to ask? Anything that might be sensitive or controversial, and nothing you say will offend me? Is there any questions that you have for me that are like you might be scared to ask, maybe, or or anything?
No, I'm not scared. The one thing that I want to make sure that on my podcast is like, I'm not looking for drama, and
Yeah.
I'm not looking to start up drama or anything like that. I would say, remember in the very first of this podcast, again, I'm very impressed with what you're doing. So there's no, but a lot of people in the beginning were like, who is this Briston guy? And he's come on the scenes and things like that. And I'm sure for you, maybe you just didn't care, but I'm sure there's some of that, right? Like, it's okay, I'm getting on the scenes and I'm just now starting. How did that, the beginning, how did you feel? And did you just didn't think about it? What went on in your mind? Maybe you didn't feel that way, or maybe you didn't see that,
Mhm.
but I did.
Just like,
I thought that. I was like, who's this kid? Is he?
yeah.
But over time, I've really been pretty impressed.
Thanks, man. Yeah. Yeah. I'm glad you actually brought that up because the beginning was very interesting when I first started. So, but I had to start somewhere. In the beginning, I remember I posted in that DFW running group, hey, I'm putting on the hardest marathon, 26.2
I
mile
think I
marathon
remember
in
that.
Texas.
That's my group, by the
And
way.
yeah, that was your group. And I remember people were pissed. They were like,
Yeah, I remember that.
what do you mean hardest? They were like, the habanero is the hardest, and the
Yeah,
habanero doesn't even have a 26-mile marathon. So I was like, what are you talking about? But yeah, I put that in there, and I'm pretty bold and confident and stuff like that whenever I'm saying stuff like that. And I looked around at every single 26.2 mile marathon in Texas, and there was not one that's in the middle of the day that started at noon on July, in the middle of July
yeah,
on
yeah.
sand. Um, there wasn't one. Yeah, there was a habanero 100, but they didn't have a 26.2 mile marathon. This is the hardest marathon in Texas. And so I posted that, and a lot of people were pissed. And I remember Rob commented, and he said something like, Rob Goyen with Charleston over Texas, he
Yeah,
said, he backed me up. He said something like, every dog's got to eat or something. I don't remember exactly what he said, but he basically was supporting me in
he's pretty.
supporting what
Yeah,
I was doing. And it did go down in history from my knowledge as being one of the hardest organized 26.2 mile marathons in the state of Texas. And obviously we discontinued that race because I matured and I realized I want to put on great experiences for people, not terrible suffering experiences in that manner. But it just
yeah,
liability wise, as far as like
too
cost
much.
liabilities, and it just ended up not being right. So we canceled doing that. But yeah, I definitely got a lot of backlash, and there
But
were
people
people in
showed
the
up, didn't they?
community. Yeah, yeah, and there were people in the community that were like, "I'm never gonna run one of your races.
Yeah,
Your races are terrible." And these are people that never ran with me before, and I remember that, and it did definitely affect me in the beginning because I can sometimes be a people pleaser depending on the day and
yeah.
my mood. But yeah, I took that backlash to heart, and then I would have people tell me, "Don't take it to heart." And I would have people tell me, "If you didn't have the hate, and you're not doing it right."
Yeah.
And so, but if anything, it just fueled the fire to allow me to want to put on better, more professional races, because when people would say things negative, I'd be like, "How can I prove them wrong? What can I start doing now?" And yeah,
I love, Briston, that you took that to heart. You had the race. Sure, it was really hard. You learned from that race. And one of the things that you said was, look, I want a better experience race. It doesn't have to be easy. It still can be hard. Obviously, anytime in the summer you run in Texas, it's going to be hard and hot and all that kind of stuff. You want people to have a more enjoyable race, right? And that's what you're starting to create and have created. Geez, you have 30 plus races and you've been extremely successful. So I say hats off to you and the team, and you should be proud of what you've done, you know?
yeah, I appreciate that, man. Yeah, it was a long, uh, like a long emotional roller coaster for me. I have a video actually of me 1 year ago today, this close to quitting, giving it all up. I'll talk about that real quick because that was actually a really
Yeah.
interesting time. So I graduated college last year, and I had to live on the business for the first time. And this is my first time paying myself for the business was last year. So I built this thing over 3 years, reinvested everything back into it. I would pay for a few $1,000s for my college tuition each semester out of the business. But as soon as I graduated college, it was my first time ever living on my own. And it was either live or die. It's
Mm.
either I put on more races to live off this business and the business keeps going, or I go get a regular job. and this business dies. And so it forced, I didn't want this thing to die. I've been building for 3 years. And so I began to put on or start creating races for the consistency that we have just so I could live, just so I could pay the rent, pay for food, pay the bills, and pay for gas. And I lived very frugally at the beginning of this year. And then after a few months, after living out the business for 6 months, things started to take off in January of the beginning of this year. And for the first time ever, I was seeing these huge numbers every month that were very consistent that came out of nowhere. But right before that, though, I was this close to quitting and giving it all up. I literally have a video of me crying in my apartment over here that I'm in right now. And in the video, I'm like, I don't know if I can do this because I was getting a lot of hate online with people being like, super just, I'm okay with criticism, but just
Yeah.
extremely hateful criticism. And on top of that, I'm barely
Not
paying
against anybody.
yeah. And I'm over here barely paying the bills, pouring my heart and soul into this thing. And I'm getting all this hate criticism online. And I was just done. I was like, I'm done. I
Mhm.
called a few people saying, hey, do you want to buy some races? I don't know if I can do this anymore. And that was like in November of last year. And I don't know, slept on it and was finishing out some races. And then January hit. And all of a sudden, like I had started to have these huge numbers. And all those races I had planned had started finally coming in. And I started to see these huge numbers come in I get paid every 2 weeks from Ultra sign up. And I started seeing all these big numbers coming in. And then January, February, March, they were very consistent. And I was like, okay, like I can live off of this comfortably now. And I still pay myself a modest salary. I was paying myself at the time $3,000 a month for my wife and my wife doesn't work because she has narcolepsy and she's not able to drive. I was living off $3,000 a month, and even still to this day, yeah, we're bringing in a lot more money now, but I'm still paying myself very frugally, just enough to get by. I don't need a big salary, but yeah, that was a scary time, man. And I still have the video on my phone. I like recorded myself about it because I was like, maybe in the future I can look back at this and see I bounced back, or maybe in the future I'll look back on this and see how it started all crumbling. One of the two. Never.
Look at you, man. This year's turned around a little bit.
Yeah.
First thing I know, we're pretty much up on the hour. It's been really great to hear your story and all the things that you've accomplished and gone through. And look, I think there's always good and bad things that happen, or I don't always call them bad, but there's always hurdles that you have to jump through and you have to learn. And when you deal with retail kind of stuff and opinions, because in trail running and in general, it's like running in general, there's a lot of people's opinions and they've done a lot of races. So they think they know exactly what you need. But look, you've done it, been there, and you continue to kill it. So congrats. Of
Thanks, man. I appreciate the support and encouragement. So,
course.
but yeah, man, I appreciate you for letting me come on here and you ask me a bunch of questions for people to learn more. So,
Yeah. Thanks for tuning in to another DFW Running Talk. I'm Chris Stetzel, and please don't forget to rate and review us. And Briston, thanks again.
thanks, man.
All right.